When I dreamed about traveling to Europe, I imagined beautiful cities, amazing experiences, the freedom of exploring somewhere completely new. What I didn't expect was loneliness. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being physically alone. The kind that hits when you're surrounded by thousands of people and still feel completely out of place. I remember standing there on my trip, watching everyone around me move confidently through their day, and wondering why I felt so disconnected from everything. And that was the moment I realized something nobody had warned me about before coming to Europe. For a long time, Europe existed only in my imagination. It was one of those places I had seen in videos, movies, and travel photos. The kind of place you tell yourself you'll visit one day. And eventually, that day finally came. I remember arriving and feeling a genuine sense of excitement. Everything looked different. The streets, the architecture, the sounds around me, even simple things felt interesting because they were new. For the first few hours, I couldn't stop looking around. Every corner felt like something worth remembering. Every building felt like a postcard. And in those moments, it felt exactly like I had imagined. Maybe even better. I kept thinking, I'm actually here. After all the planning, all the dreaming, all the waiting. I was finally experiencing Europe for myself. But something started changing as the excitement settled down. Not immediately, slowly, almost without me noticing. The sightseeing ended, the adrenaline started fading, and for the first time all day, I wasn't focused on what I was seeing. I was focused on how I was feeling. And that's when something unexpected began to creep in. Something I had never considered while planning the trip. Something that had nothing to do with trains, hotels, or directions. And in the next chapter, I'll show you the moment I first started feeling it. It started in a very ordinary moment. Nothing dramatic happened, nobody was rude to me. Nothing went wrong. In fact, the trip was going exactly as planned. And maybe that's why the feeling caught me completely off guard. I remember sitting alone that evening, watching people pass by. Groups of friends laughing together. Families sharing meals. Couples taking photos. Everyone seemed connected to someone. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere. And for the first time since arriving, I felt completely disconnected. Not from the city, from the people around me. I suddenly realized that while I was surrounded by thousands of people, I didn't know a single one of them. I couldn't call anyone nearby. I couldn't simply meet up with a friend. I was experiencing this incredible place, but I was experiencing it alone. And the strange thing was, I had chosen to travel this way. I knew I would be alone. But knowing it and feeling it are two completely different things. Because when you're planning a trip, you think about the exciting parts. The landmarks, the food, the adventure. You don't always think about the quiet moments. The moments where the excitement fades for a second, and you're left alone with your thoughts. And that's exactly where I found myself that night, wondering why I suddenly felt so out of place. And in the next chapter, I'll tell you about the mistake I made that loneliness feel even heavier. At first, I tried to ignore the feeling. I told myself it was nothing. That I was just tired from traveling. That I would feel better tomorrow. But the more I tried to push it away, the stronger it seemed to become. And then I made a mistake that made everything worse. I started comparing my experience to everyone else's. As I looked around, it seemed like everybody was having a perfect trip. People were laughing, exploring, taking photos, sharing moments together, and without even realizing it, I started asking myself a dangerous question. Why am I not feeling the same way? The more I asked that question, the worse I felt. Because now I wasn't just feeling lonely. I was feeling like I was somehow doing travel wrong. Like everyone else had figured something out that I hadn't. Like I was missing something. Looking back now, I realize how unfair I was being to myself. Because I wasn't comparing my reality to their reality. I was comparing my reality to the small highlights I could see from the outside. And that's a comparison nobody can win. What I couldn't see was that many of those people probably had difficult moments too. Moments of uncertainty, moments of loneliness, moments where they questioned themselves. But in that moment, I couldn't see any of that. I could only see my own struggle. And the more I focused on it, the heavier it felt. Until eventually, Something happened that completely changed how I looked at the situation. And in the next chapter, I'll show you the realization that helped me stop fighting the feeling and start understanding it. The turning point didn't happen because my situation suddenly changed. I wasn't surrounded by new friends. Nothing magical happened. I was still in the same city, still alone, still far from home, but something inside me started changing. I remember sitting there and realizing something simple. Maybe the problem wasn't that I felt lonely. Maybe the problem was that I thought I wasn't supposed to. I had created this picture in my mind of what Europe was supposed to feel like. Exciting, perfect, life-changing every single moment. And when my real experience didn't match that picture, I thought something was wrong. But the truth was, nothing was wrong at all. I was simply having a human experience. An honest experience. Because travel isn't just excitement. It's emotion. And emotions aren't always positive. Sometimes they're uncomfortable. Sometimes they're confusing. Sometimes they're lonely. And that's okay. The moment I stopped fighting that feeling, it started losing its power over me. I stopped judging myself for it. Stopped trying to force myself to feel differently. Stopped treating loneliness like a failure. And strangely enough, the more I accepted it, the lighter I felt. Because I was no longer carrying two burdens. I was only carrying one. The feeling itself, not the shame of having the feeling. And that realization completely changed the rest of the trip. Because in the next chapter, I'll share the lesson I took away from that experience. A lesson I wish someone had told me before I ever boarded the plane. Looking back now, I think the biggest lesson from that first experience in Europe had nothing to do with travel. It had everything to do with expectations. I expected every moment to feel exciting. I expected confidence to come naturally. I expected myself to instantly adapt to a completely new environment. And when those things didn't happen, I thought I was doing something wrong. But I wasn't. I was simply experiencing something new. And that's what I wish someone had told me before I left. Feeling lonely doesn't mean you're failing. Feeling overwhelmed doesn't mean you're weak. Feeling uncertain doesn't mean you made the wrong decision. It means you're growing, because every meaningful experience asks something from us. Travel asks us to leave behind what's familiar. And whenever we leave behind what's familiar, there's naturally going to be some discomfort. Some uncertainty, some loneliness. But that's also where growth happens. That first night taught me that confidence isn't the absence of uncomfortable feelings. Confidence is continuing forward even when those feelings show up. Today, when I travel, I don't expect every moment to feel perfect. I don't expect myself to have all the answers. And because of that, I enjoy the experience so much more. Because now I'm not trying to have the perfect trip. I'm simply allowing myself to have a real one. And honestly, that's what made Europe so memorable in the first place. When I think about that trip now, the thing I remember most isn't a landmark. It isn't a train ride. It isn't even a specific place. It's that moment when I realized I wasn't alone in feeling alone. Because over time, I've discovered that so many travelers experience the exact same thing. They just don't always talk about it. We share the photos, the highlights, the exciting moments, but we rarely share the quiet moments. The moments where we're unsure of ourselves. The moments where we're adapting. The moments where we're growing. And maybe that's why I wanted to tell this story. Because if you're planning your first trip to Europe, or your first big trip anywhere, I want you to know something. If you feel lonely sometimes, that's okay. If you feel overwhelmed, that's okay. If you question yourself for a moment, that's okay too. It doesn't mean you're doing travel wrong. It means you're having a real experience. And sometimes those real experiences teach us more than the perfect ones ever could. Looking back, I didn't expect to feel lonely in Europe. But that feeling ended up teaching me something valuable. It taught me patience, self-awareness, and the understanding that growth often hides inside the moments we least expect. So if you've ever felt this way while traveling, let me know in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, because next time I'll share another side of Europe travel that almost nobody talks about, and it completely changed how I see traveling today. I'll see you in the next one.